Retirement taught me that we've all been sold a lie. You know, when I was younger, if somebody had said those words to me, I probably would have laughed and kept walking. I would have thought they were bitter, disappointed with life, maybe even lazy. Because when you're young, you truly believe the world has already figured life out for you. You think the system must be right because everybody around you is doing the exact same thing. Wake up early, rush through breakfast, sit in traffic, spend the best hours of your day working under pressure. Come home tired, watch television for a little while, sleep, and then do it all again tomorrow. And if you do that long enough, they tell you one day you'll finally reach happiness. One day you'll finally rest. One day life will belong to you. Well, I'm an old man now, and after many years of retirement, I can tell you something honestly from the bottom of my heart. Life was never supposed to feel like a waiting room. You spend decades believing freedom is somewhere far ahead of you, just beyond the next promotion, the next paycheck, the next mortgage payment, the next responsibility. But the strange thing is, every time you reach one goal, another one appears immediately after it. There is always another obligation waiting, another bill, another expectation, another person needing something from you. And before you realize it, your hair is gray, your back hurts in the morning, and your entire life has been spent asking permission to exist comfortably. Permission to rest, permission to travel, permission to stay home for a few days. Isn't that a strange thing when you really think about it? Fully grown adults asking another adult if they're allowed to take a week off so they can sit near the ocean and breathe for a little while. I did that for over 40 years of my life, and at the time, I thought it was normal. Most people do. That's the dangerous part. When everyone around you accepts exhaustion as normal, you stop questioning it. And let me tell you something else that nobody really warns you about when you're younger. It's not the hard work that drains you the most. Human beings can survive hard work. We're tougher than we think. No, the real exhaustion comes from constantly being surrounded by people you would never voluntarily choose to spend your life with. That's the part nobody says out loud. You spend years trapped in offices, workplaces, meetings, social events, pretending to care about conversations you'd walk away from in normal life. You smile because you have to. You nod because it keeps the peace. You tolerate personalities that slowly wear down your spirit, little by little, every single day. The gossipers, the attention seekers, the chronic complainers, the people who bring tension into every room they enter, the ones who seem almost offended by peace and silence. Back then, I thought adulthood simply required enduring all of it. I thought maturity meant learning how to tolerate constant emotional noise. But retirement showed me something completely different. Peace was never weakness. Peace was what I had been starving for my entire life. The funny thing is, when you first retire, you don't notice this immediately. At least I didn't. The habits of working life stay inside you for a long time. I remember waking up during my first year of retirement feeling guilty for sitting still, guilty for taking a slow morning, guilty for drinking coffee without looking at a clock. Isn't that sad? A man spends his entire life earning rest, and when rest finally arrives, he no longer knows how to accept it. That's how deeply conditioning affects people. We become so trained to measure our value through productivity that silence almost feels uncomfortable at first. I used to think every hour needed to be useful, efficient, productive. But now, some of the best moments of my life happen in complete stillness, sitting quietly in the garden early in the morning, listening to birds, walking slowly without needing to arrive anywhere, reading a few pages of a book while rain taps against the windows, having an afternoon where absolutely nothing important happens. Younger people might hear that and think it sounds boring, but when you've spent decades carrying pressure in your chest, peace becomes the greatest luxury you can imagine. And loneliness? Now there's another thing people misunderstand completely. Society treats solitude like it's some kind of tragedy. If an older man enjoys being alone, people immediately assume he must be sad. But solitude and loneliness are not the same thing at all. Loneliness hurts because it feels unwanted. Solitude heals because it is chosen. There's a massive difference between the two. Some of the loneliest years of my life happened when I was constantly surrounded by people. Noise does not cure loneliness. Crowds do not guarantee connection. In fact, sometimes the world becomes so loud that you completely lose touch with yourself. Retirement gave me something I had not experienced since I was a very young man: space to hear my own thoughts again. And once that happens, something changes inside you permanently. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing everybody to like you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to fit into rooms that never felt comfortable in the first place. At my age now, I no longer argue just to protect my ego. I no longer attend gatherings out of obligation. If a person drains my energy every time I see them, I quietly create distance. Not out of cruelty, not out of bitterness, simply because I finally understand how valuable emotional peace really is. When you're younger, you trade your peace away cheaply. You hand it over for career advancement, social acceptance, appearances, politeness, obligations. But eventually, if you're lucky enough to grow older, you begin to realize your energy is finite. Your days are finite. Your patience becomes more selective because your time becomes more precious. And that realization changes relationships too. One thing retirement exposed very quickly was how many friendships were built purely on circumstance. Workplace friendships especially. People you laughed with every day suddenly disappear once the job disappears. At first, that realization can sting a little. You wonder whether those connections were ever real at all. But over time, you begin to understand something important. Shared environments create temporary closeness, but genuine friendship survives distance, silence, and time. The people who truly care about you remain present even when there's nothing practical tying you together anymore. Those are the relationships worth protecting. The older I get, the more I believe most people are not actually searching for excitement. They think they are, but they're really searching for relief. Relief from stress, relief from pressure, relief from noise, relief from constantly performing for the world. And modern life makes performance feel mandatory. Everybody is branding themselves now, competing for attention, trying to appear successful, interesting, relevant. It's exhausting to watch, honestly. Somewhere along the way, human beings forgot how to simply exist quietly, without needing an audience for it. And I'll tell you something else I noticed after retirement, something that took me years to fully understand. The world rewards people for being busy, not necessarily for being well. Those are two completely different things. A person can have a packed schedule, endless meetings, constant notifications, and still feel emotionally empty every single day. But because they look productive from the outside, society praises them. Meanwhile, an older man sitting peacefully on his porch watching the sunset is often viewed as if he's doing nothing important. But I think we've got that backwards. There is tremendous wisdom in learning how to be still. There is tremendous wisdom in learning how to sit quietly with yourself without needing distraction every 5 minutes. When I was younger, silence made me uncomfortable. I always needed movement around me, noise, television in the background, conversations, schedules, deadlines. I thought a full life meant a crowded life. But now, in my later years, I finally understand that too much noise can slowly disconnect you from your own soul. You become reactive instead of reflective. You spend your life responding to everybody else's needs and eventually forget to ask yourself a very simple question. What actually makes me feel at peace? Not impressed, not admired, not envied. Peaceful. Those are very different things. And I think many older people eventually reach this quiet realization that some of the happiest moments in life are incredibly ordinary. Nobody tells you that when you're young because ordinary moments don't sell products. They don't make headlines. But sitting outside with a warm cup of coffee on a calm morning, hearing the wind move through trees, sharing a comfortable silence with someone you love, walking the dog at sunset, those moments carry a kind of richness money can't really buy. You stop needing every day to feel exciting. In fact, too much excitement eventually becomes exhausting. What you begin craving instead is steadiness, calmness, simplicity, a life that no longer constantly pulls at your nervous system. And let me say this carefully, because I know many people listening are around my age and may understand exactly what I mean. There comes a point where your tolerance for emotional chaos drops dramatically. Not because you become cold, but because you finally understand the cost of stress. When you're younger, you can recover from draining environments more easily. You bounce back faster. But as you get older, tension lingers in the body longer. Loud people feel louder. Negativity feels heavier. Drama becomes unbearable. And so, without even realizing it, you start protecting your peace almost instinctively. You become more selective about who enters your life, more selective about where you spend your energy, more selective about what deserves your attention. I used to think this meant becoming antisocial. Now I think it means becoming emotionally intelligent. There's wisdom in recognizing that not every argument deserves your participation. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every opinion deserves a response. Some people spend their entire lives reacting to everything around them until they're emotionally exhausted. But age teaches restraint. It teaches you that preserving your inner calm is far more important than winning pointless battles. And retirement, if you're fortunate enough to experience it in reasonable health, gives you the opportunity to finally step outside the machine for a moment and observe life differently. You begin noticing how rushed everybody is, how anxious, how permanently distracted. People can't sit quietly anymore. The moment silence appears, they grab a phone. The moment boredom arrives, they search for stimulation. But boredom isn't always bad. Sometimes boredom is where reflection begins. Sometimes silence, it's where healing begins. I think many people are terrified of stillness because stillness forces honesty. When life finally becomes quiet, you can no longer hide from yourself so easily. That's one reason I believe retirement changes people so deeply. For the first time in decades, many people are no longer defined by a role. You're no longer the manager, the employee, the provider, the worker. Those labels slowly fall away. And at first, that can feel unsettling because society teaches us to build our identity around usefulness. But eventually, if you allow yourself time, something beautiful happens. You begin rediscovering who you actually are underneath all those responsibilities. You remember old interests, old passions, old parts of yourself that got buried beneath survival and routine. I've spoken to many retirees over the years, and one thing comes up again and again. Regret rarely centers around not making more money. Most regrets sound much quieter than that. People wish they'd worried less. They wish they'd spent more time with loved ones. They wish they hadn't allowed work stress to dominate their entire personality. They wish they'd slowed down sooner. That's the heartbreaking irony of life. By the time many people finally learn what truly matters, most of their life has already passed. Now, I'm not saying work itself is bad. Responsibility gives life structure. Purpose matters. Contributing to the world matters. But somewhere along the line, many societies began treating human beings like productivity machines instead of emotional creatures. Rest became something people had to earn rather than something necessary for health. And that mindset damages people slowly over decades. You can see it in their faces. Constant tension, constant fatigue, constant pressure to keep up. No wonder so many older people eventually fall in love with peaceful routines once retirement arrives. Their nervous systems have been overstimulated for years. These days, I find joy in things my younger self would never have understood. A quiet afternoon, a good conversation, a comfortable chair, a slow walk with no destination. Waking up without an alarm clock still feels like a luxury to me, even after all these years. And perhaps that sounds small to some people, but I don't think life is really built from giant moments anyway. Most of life is made from ordinary days. The question is whether those ordinary days feel heavy or peaceful. And maybe that's the lie many of us were sold. We were taught to chase status, possessions, busyness, approval, and endless achievement, as though those things alone could fulfill the human spirit. But after living long enough, I've come to believe that freedom matters more than status. Calm matters more than appearance. Time matters more than money. And peace of mind? Well, peace of mind may be one of the richest things a human being can ever possess. At my age now, I no longer need the world's permission to enjoy my life quietly. I don't need to prove I'm busy. I don't need to compete with anybody. I don't need to impress strangers. There is something deeply liberating about reaching a stage of life where your own company finally feels sufficient. Not perfect. Not exciting every day, but honest, calm, real. And if there's one thing I'd say to younger people listening, it's this. Don't wait until old age to start protecting your peace. Don't spend your healthiest years constantly sacrificing your mental well-being just to meet expectations that never truly end. Learn early that rest is valuable. Solitude is valuable. Genuine relationships are valuable. And time is far more precious than most people realize while they still have plenty of it. Anyway, those are just the thoughts of an old man who's had a lot of time to sit quietly and think about life. Maybe some of you understand exactly what I mean, and maybe some of you won't until much later. Either way, I appreciate you spending this time with me today. Take care of yourselves, take care of your peace, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening, my friends.